I try to be, good afternoon, thank you for invitation. I try to be as fast as consistent with clarity, simply giving you an update on the position of the BBMRI CZ within our European biobank system, ecosystem, which is called BBMRI ERIC. So today I think we can quite clearly and proudly say that the BBMRI CZ is a country-wide expert system, which is incorporated in the backbone of healthcare organization and universities. As you can see here we have the system of medical schools. Here are the participating and key elements of the system, you know, the faculty hospital, the teaching hospitals. Here is our institution, Masaryk Memorial Cancer Institute, and here we have what we call the European Infrastructure Consortium headquarters and affiliated structures which are needed for the operation. Yes, so that this is the way how it looks like, and it's a huge change from what we have, like, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, and so I'm really proud and thankful to my colleagues, you know, really to do a lot of work over a long period of time. Where is the importance? As we know today, I mean, the main topic and the main actually issue which is discussed is the personalized medicine in various aspects of this work. And the general strategy of the medical research community is to facilitate this kind of translation, meaning, you know, taking the meaningful result and making this available for the benefit of the patient. And this is quite trivial, but very important slide, you know, in a way to say that essentially all the discoveries which are made wherever, for example here, needs to be properly tested, you know, until being applied to specific patients. And this brings us a little bit to our morning discussion, and simply say, well, if we are looking to the persons as a unit, we need to look for some of the things which we were neglecting for a while a little bit, something like outliers. It is clear that, you know, biobank specimens needs to be linked to the complete medical history. And what is quite important is that the data sets, as we say today, really needs to be cleaned up by the medically qualified specialists. The results of and outputs of our BBMRI check system are briefly depicted here, and I will touch to this later on during my presentation. It's again, you know, important, that very good occasion for me to say that we went through the International Comprehensive Evaluation as a BBMRI infrastructure in 2017, getting the mark excellent, so that meaning, you know, the top rank among the research infrastructures in the Czech Republic. And as you can see, some of the results, you know, if you collect all these institutions, are actually quite interesting. So, as was I think, you know, described here by Karl Becker, the biobanking of clinical specimens requires medical staff. Anyway, that's a key element, yeah. And the fact is that the tissue material is essentially the surgical leftover and must be taken before diagnosis from non-fixed resection specimens. Yeah? And the second caveat is that the sampling must not hamper the process of diagnosis, and qualified board-certified pathologists must do a couple of things, which you can see here. This is the tumor under this stricture, so that the pathologist needs to fix, you know, where the place is. Then what he needs to do is to make all the tissue sampling, and the reason why I'm showing this is the extra work which we put on the pathologist by sampling, for example, the specimen for the colobiome, for the microbiome from the tumor place, so that again, it creates a non-trivial piece of work to those people, you know, simply to convince them that, you know, inherent part of their effort is essentially the focus of the proper biobanking. And that's the result of his work. So this is essentially a leftover, an equivalent, hopefully. We call this subsample. Yeah? This is not the sample per se, this is a subsample, which then goes to the biological repositories. In summing up, this is the interim summary, is that, you know, the current structure of the biobanks as we as we endorse them, you know, over during a couple of years, simply saying that the cancer biobank needs to have, you know, this line of specimens from the time of operation, and then it needs to have some sort of continuous model where we can collect, you know, the specimens on a timely basis. And this is essentially something which then makes for you a unit, and that unit is a patient, and this is what you can do for the meaningful medical research. And this slide, actually, this is actually the figure which I took from the Lancet publication about 2 years ago, which simply give us, you know, a kind of confidence of what we are doing probably right. In the second part of my presentation, I would like to mention some of the concepts which pertain to the open access and in principle, the access type procedures. And this is FAIR and fair health concepts, which may sound a little bit new to you, but it's not that much difficult, you know, to explain that. The FAIR principles are the generic rules to make the data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Yeah? And the question if FAIR is enough. And again, I would like to iterate on what Karl said a couple minutes ago, and this is this. Yeah, really challenges today is obviously the irreproducibility problem resulting in all the huge numbers which were presented him by in one of his slides. And you can really see that the prevalence of irreproducibility still is really very high. And this is one of the reasons. As we are going towards the personalized medicine, yeah, we still put a lot of emphasis on the modeling, which is not transferable to humans. Yeah, one thing is, you know, if we are studying biological phenomena and things like that, like, you know, general pathways in biology, etc., etc. The other thing is, if we want to take this knowledge and to translocate or transfer this knowledge or reinterpret rather this knowledge in within the context of patients. And these are essentially the elements which you cannot model using nothing but something which is derived from humans. And what it is, it could be something like that, so that, you know, we are in a kind of new field where we need to look a little bit more on the rare disease as a models, on a long-term perspective cohorts, where again we can gather very interesting information which may be usable in personalized medicine. And in this particular group, which is especially pertinent, you know, to cancer, because, you know, the long-term survivors are the subgroup of patients who, for some reason, which are more or less explainable, etc., etc., simply survived their disease for quite a very long time. Yeah. So back to the FAIR principle and the fair health, simply to explain what is reusable. Reusable actually encompasses these things. The data or the metadata have plurality of accurate and relevant attributes, are released with clear and accessible data usage license, and meet the domain relevant community standards. And me, as not being bioinformatician, I put there a note, what is the metadata? As I was taught by Petr Holub, and the metadata are data about data. Yeah, so this is for us, being from laboratories, something like the audit trail. Yeah, when I have the result, I need to have something like the audit trail, and then I have the whole metadata for that particular event. Yeah? Additional fair health principles which were brought up by BBMRI Eric are those which is united view of biological material and data reproducibility issue and reusability, privacy protection, and reasonable sound incentive schemes. And what is important to me, and I think, you know, it's important to realize where we are. On this scale, it's, for example, myself, yeah, with the name, with the specific health-related information. Then, as we go this way, in an attempt to anonymize, we end up here having absolutely anonymized data, but this is what we don't want to have, because this is just noise. Yeah? So that during the process of rather pseudonymization, we need to move somewhere along this line to be able to work with the data which are compliant currently with the GDPR, are robustly pseudonymized, but at the end of the day, they can be reconstructed, in a personalized terms. Then the whole chain of events makes sense. Yeah. The FAIRHEL concepts was published, as you can see here, by the team of the BBMRI, Eric, with the significant contribution of the Czech Republic, because Professor Holub is currently the IT chair and the director of this is a common service IT of the BBMRI, Eric, and he's one of the key persons behind this concept. So what are the tools of the BBMRI, Eric, nowadays provided for the user community? For the findability of the specimens, we have these tools. For the accessibility, we have Negotiator. For the interoperability, we have community and general standards, as was again alluded here to by Karl Becker. For the reproducibility and reusability, we have implementation of quality in biobanks and provenance information. For privacy and trust, we have GDPR and related things, pertaining to this situation. And then for the reasonable set of incentives, we have performance indicators. And the BBMRI, Eric, also have some kind of tools as IT tools that can be directly installed to the respective institution. Here in this slide, I would like our colleague, to open the BBMRI directory, because I think, these people did really a lot of work. If we open the directory number 4, and this is just online presentation, yeah. Here now you can see, the old string of biobanks which are today, comprised by the BBMRI, Eric. So when we come to ours, from the Czech Republic, I will show you this one. When you are a user, so you can just at this point collect the information on what is there and what kind of collection, for example, has some kind of quality attributes. For example, regarding our case, the genomic DNA in long-term storage collection has CNT as this particular attribute as it fits, this specific technical specification. And from that point, I would like to ask, my colleagues from the other biobanks in the country simply to supply this information to be able to show it up at the European level. Can we continue in my presentation, please? Yeah, so let's go further on. Next slide. I can do it by myself, sorry. So today, the BBMRI Eric directory comprises of 626 biobanks, and the estimation is about, I even cannot read that, this is such a huge amount of specimens which are essentially collected, in this well-condensed, in my view, network of biobanks. Through the tools I'm presenting, I will show you one more, is available to the researchers and clinical researchers in Europe and worldwide. And here we can look, what the negotiator is. This is another important functionality developed by BBMRI, Eric. And again, if we can open the negotiator link. Yeah. Negotiator is a specific tool, as the name implies, if you are a researcher, and you look at this page, and as a researcher, you would like to look for a specific specimens which you find out before. Here, there are the functions, how you essentially communicate to the specific biobank which you select before you enter the negotiator, yeah? And then when we go at the end to this part, you interact with the biobanker or with the responsible person from the specific biobank, from the specific institution, and then once you finalize it, you can directly send the request for the data sample set, which are of your interest. Thank you. Can we continue in the presentation, please? Yes, so that these IT components, as I presented to you, the directory and sample and data negotiator are already in place. You can just open it from the cell phone right now if you want to. And the sample locator, which is the utility which will help the researcher to find what kind of specimens are where. And the assumption is that it's gonna be in place during the 2018, yes? So that the IT components are very key elements of this functionality of the ERIC as a system. Interoperability, as we mentioned, you know, comprises of community standards, of big standards, such as newly prepared ISO norm for the biobanks, and upcoming fair health tools is a sample locator, as I mentioned, you know, a minute ago. And that tool essentially will help, as I said, you know, the researcher to find out the places where, you know, the specimens which I'm really interested in can be located, and how can I then negotiate, you know, to the respective institution to obtain them for my research. Yeah. Regarding the quality and reproducibility effort, it was already mentioned that this is right now, I think, at least to my knowledge, the biggest effort is in developing the ISO standards for biobanks, which we can expect, I think, in 2019-20 sometimes around this year. I think you are, Carl, the member of this committee, so that, you know, you may comment this on a more brief, more extended way in the discussion if there is an interest. And regarding authentication and authentication which is suitable for privacy-sensitive data, again, I think, you know, we as a Czech Republic really contributed a lot in materializing, you know, the federated authentication, which is suitable for accessing human biological material. And this is based on the EduID of a researcher affiliated to the academic institution. So that if you are an employee of, say, Charles University, Technical University of Graz, or Masaryk University, as I am, I have the EduID of this structure, and then I go in the system, and in the system I put the secondary password to my university system. And this is the way how the system cross-authenticates, you know, the requester to be really the employee of, let me say, you know, this or that academic institution. For the non-academic institution members or researchers, they need to register, which is a process which is relatively simple, but, you know, it has to be kept in mind, you know, that really thorough level of security has to be kept, you know, during all these processes. There was a mention on the code of conduct, so I would just limit my statement that, you know, GDPR assumes, you know, the code of conduct to be in place, which is the subject of the current discussions, mostly solving these processes such as secondary use of data, country, third country data sharing, informed consents, and guidelines for privacy enhancing techniques, etc., etc. We, as a national note, we send out a request, you know, to our partner biobanks, you know, to supply us with the information on the status, and our partner biobanks, you know, simply needs to solve this situation in collaboration with the university hospitals, where probably the data protection officer will be residing, so that these updates need to be put in the agreements between the medical schools and teaching hospitals. So that's what I have for you regarding the updates on the position of BBMRI CZ within the BBMRI ERIC, and this is not the complete list of my collaborators. And thank you very much for the occasion to have a presentation here. Thanks.